Welcome to another week in your life, human. We're using astrology on this channel. We're going to talk about the transits from October 28th to November 3rd. There's so much at stake. It just keeps building. What the hell are we doing? Where are we going? It was stresses, anxieties, love, breakups, the whole deal, right? Remember, when you're watching a video like this, you want to know your chart a little bit, but we want to take the micro view in the end. Whatever it takes to make you feel grounded, solid, at peace and calm, you use it the next couple of weeks, okay? All right, there's my claimer, not disclaimer, my claimer, okay? So let's do this. You know, just the October 28th alone, there's two aspects that happen that we're building towards as I make this video that are enough for the week. But no, we're not going to have that. We're going to have multiple things this week. And the farther we go down the line this week, the more concentrated, more packed the aspects become, okay? So Monday, 5:30 a.m. Pacific, we have Mars in Cancer, which has been transiting there here for a while here since, I think it's a month and a half now we're at the place here, a little bit more than that, is at 27 degrees and makes a harmonious relationship with Neptune in Pisces. This is dreamland, people. You watched my video last week called Waterworks, and it had to do with a lot of this stuff about emotional content, processing, what it means to feel at home, how one functions at home. Can you find the safe, grounded places for one to become in touch with one's emotions or with other people? And here, with this connection with Neptune, it's harmonious, it's dreamland. The boundaries are dissolved, right? The edge is taken off. The Mars, the warrior, the god of war in the sign of Cancer, right? The edges are taken off. We dig this. It's an oasis. We take this. While I make this video and into Monday, we take this, okay? Because we're going to ramp up for something else later in the week that's huge. So I think when it comes more than ever in our day and age with information and coming at us constantly, and what it does to our brains, what it does to our nervous systems, we want to catch a Neptune moment where we find the bath, the calm, and the chill before the next wave of intensity comes, which it's coming. That happens 5:30 a.m., 27 degrees, Mars trine Neptune. Be good to you, people. Not too long after that, at 6:34 a.m. exactly, Venus in Sagittarius, which is kind of new here in the sign, because remember, it was an intense brooding Scorpio where it's about you and I and that's it and there's nothing else and you will be mine intensity. Went into Sagittarius where things open up. It's a mutable sign, so it's always dealing with duality. Venus deals with the feminine, with relating, relationships, your senses, resources, so on and so forth too. And a sign like Sagittarius seeks out. It's ruled by Jupiter. It wants to explore new realms, new boundaries, and there's fun and exhilaration in that. And that fire sign needs that. It needs the wind in its face, right? So Venus and Sag is pushing forward that way. But there's a major stop sign that happens because at 6:34 a.m., Saturn in Pisces, a fellow mutable sign, puts the brakes on Venus in Sagittarius and is about obligations and the rules and playing by them. Temporary boundaries, it can seem like hardcore boundaries, and Venus in Sagittarius doesn't like this. Remember, they're wanting to push out and seek, but Sag says stop, or Saturn in Pisces says stop. No, can't go any farther. We need to talk about things. We need to have a conversation about how you're relating. We need to know the groundwork and the rules and the pillars and foundations that you supposedly talked about in the beginning of your conversation, Venus and Sag, but now you're just, did you forget? And Saturn lays down the law, and this could be very restrictive for some people, especially Sagittarius, which, you know, they're wanting to push out. They're wanting to have fun. There's multiple options, multiple truths in relating. But Saturn says no. Here, contract disputes, contracts and relationships, these are situations where I've seen relationships break up or splinter off because of the reality that Saturn brings. And this is a clue for you Sagittarians out there and for other mutable signs like Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces. Venus is there now. And later this week, I'm going to talk about this, Mercury will leave Scorpio and enter Sagittarius also. And eventually, when we get to mid and late November, there will be a Mercury retrograde that happens in Sagittarius. So there's a storyline happening here for mutable signs that is not going away. And Saturn is giving the clue right now, saying, hey, buck up and we need to talk, or there needs to be boundaries set, foundations discussed, right? Reality. So that happens here at 6:34 a.m. Monday the 28th Pacific time. I'm jumping to the 30th now on Wednesday Pacific, and it has to do with Mercury and Scorpio. Mercury, ideas, thoughts, opinions, how we communicate, how we process, how we get things from point A to point B. It's been in here in the sign of Scorpio now for several weeks. When it is there, I talked about this in my video last week, we're dealing with a hyper-focused truth, an obsessive truth at times, and it's fixated and focused on acquiring information like a private investigator, like a private eye, observing, hiding out in the background, right? Getting all the facts, getting all the information that it needs. For what? For why? It depends on the Scorpio, right? So, last week I said, be careful, Scorpios. You don't use this for nefarious purposes like you can. At the same time, we appreciate a Mercury and Scorpio because when the truth needs to be told, the 100% truth, Mercury and Scorpio does it like no other. Well, Mercury and Gemini, like me, we got our own tricky ways. But I respect the Mercury and Scorpios because when it comes down to it, they'll say things no one else will say. And it's most likely something that you need to hear that no one else would tell you, right? Again, we don't want to use this for nefarious, messed up purposes. But Mercury, at 3:14 there on Wednesday, we build up to this, is opposite Uranus and Taurus. And Uranus is like the lightning bolt that comes in, that sets off, and whatever it touches, it cracks open. It needs to liberate it. It wants to liberate it. It needs to change something that's been habitually happening that doesn't work anymore. Things that used to work in Mercury and Scorpio don't work anymore. Here comes Uranus and Taurus to blast it open. Usually we're dealing with surprises, ingenuity, ideas, things that come out of the blue. We're dealing with liberation in a sense. We're also dealing with surprise. And so Mercury and Scorpio now, in a sense, an example, does speak the truth. And it could be surprising for some of you. And like, I didn't think you would ever say that, or you could say that, or I didn't even know that you knew that, Mercury and Scorpio. And Mercury and Scorpio says, well, what do you think I've been doing the whole time? Watching you, observing you, obsessing about you. So, that type of thing gets set off with Uranus, and some may not like the truth, or even the Mercury and Scorpio, the Scorpio didn't realize they needed to say something. Or it's an idea that one's been pondering in their Mercury and Scorpio lab of looking at whatever project they've been trying to figure out. And then the brilliant idea comes. And it's like something they've never thought of, or no one's ever thought of before. And that's the type of energy that Uranus brings. So that happens here on Wednesday, 3:14 Pacific. You've been noticing when I made these past videos last couple of weeks and what's happening, we got a lot of emotional water signs are involved here, right? And so we have to remember that there's a different type of pacing that happens with any planet and water signs. It's not like an air sign, or it comes quick, or fire. It's different. And so how things come up through water, if you can recognize this and observe this, doesn't start up here. It starts in the gut, it starts in other places of the body, right? And then it comes out. So just a side note, okay? So now we're at the 31st, Halloween for many people in the United States. I hope you're gonna enjoy it this week. If you got kids, go have fun, trick or treat, do the costume thing, man. I think what we do around Halloween, for those who practice this too, it's the midpoint of the two seasons, people who are pagan, Celtic, they're doing Samhain, it's in midpoint. The veils are thin, right? Take advantage of a holiday like this with all the pressures going on out there. Like, have some fun, okay? Just careful of sugar. So we get to Halloween, moon goes into Scorpio that morning, and then we build to another massive Mercury in Scorpio aspect that has to do with Mercury now, after being set off by Uranus, now makes a beautiful relationship with Neptune and Pisces. Now remember, in the beginning of this forecast, Mars in Cancer, water sign, did this connection to Neptune. Now here comes Mercury doing it. After the surprise idea, after the communication, the truth that was told, Mercury is softened by Neptune. And this is a more meditative, more internally connective situation where one can tap in to the dreams and to the imagination of things and to the world. And truly, the veils are thin here, right? As Mercury does this. And I think there's a different type of communication that can happen here where one not only has seen something new with Uranus the day before, but now what does it do with all of that? And what does it really mean? And for me, I will always preach on this channel that if there is a certain astrological configuration that could lend itself to imagination and creativity, which I believe always comes from a place of love and compassion, we celebrate it. And we celebrate it like it's a birthday, damn it, because there's so many other things in this world that are hard and challenging constantly. Even as astrologers, we're talking about, oh, this is going to happen, this, and I'm going to talk about some stuff later this week that's hard. But if we're looking for ways to navigate these situations, our lives, and we're going to follow astrology, we find the simple things. And Mercury and Scorpio trine Neptune here on the 31st is one of these things. Go within, whatever vessel you use to go within, you need to take the walk, catch the message. Catch the message that the world gives you when your heart is open, when you're calm, present. The world is always there for you. Nature is always there for you. I believe that, okay? So that happens on Halloween, and then we get in within hours to the new moon in Scorpio that happens on November 1st Pacific time at 5:47 a.m. Massive, massive new moon. My Scorpio people, I always giving you special messages, right? After all these years of me doing my videos, I've always done special things for you all because I understand you and I see how you roll, right? So you have this something. And I will call you out like I did last week on my Instagram stories, like stop being manipulative, okay? Stop effing around, some of you. But you've been doing a lot of hard work the last so many years, right? And I think this new moon for you is new world after the eclipses, all the transits since 2018, and everything that you've been through. This is a chance to set a vision in motion for yourselves for the long haul. This happens at 9 degrees for my Scorpio risings, all that, but I just needed to say that. Now, is it that easy? It isn't. There are many supportive aspects in this new moon. I'm actually going to do a live stream, I think, this week on this, so pay attention to that. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when I go live. All my members and subscribers, they know me from my live streams. I think I'm going to do a separate video on this, but remember, this new moon isn't so simple. Mars in Cancer. Mars rules Scorpio. Mars is in Cancer right now. We know that Mars is at the final degrees of Cancer, then it will go into Leo, but it's only brief. And then there's going to be a massive Mars retrograde that happens all the way till next spring. So this moment here, Mars, after its certain relational stuff this week with Neptune, etc., runs in to Pluto and Capricorn at 29 degrees. And this is such a deep story that we can look to things politically getting set off again this week, but in your own personal lives, that Mars going against Pluto really inherently in the beginning of stories like this doesn't seem like it ends well, because Pluto imposes and challenges Mars, and it's the Lord of the underworld. It will show you what you have been avoiding, what you haven't seen. The poison comes up from under the surface, and a lot of times they'll bring about obsessive power manipulation games. And Mars is the god of war, right? It just airs sword and shield, right? So then you have Pluto on the opposite side, and they're like this. And it's the first of 3 of these Pluto opposite Mars connections that we're going to have for months here. And so here the story gets set off, and it just so happens we're in a massive, political climate here. It doesn't seem to be helping the situation. I'm just being real with you. So understand that power and manipulation is power struggle is part of this lunation. Now, here's the thing. There's some solutions, I think, in this. They're not 100% perfect, but there are, because it just so happens that part of this new moon, Mercury is involved in a lot of this. And I've talked about Mercury now several times this week in Scorpio and what it's doing, right? So from the surprise ideas to the truth being told, to the dreamy imaginative connectiveness to the divine and love and compassion it could have, right? We want to bring this in because basically in the background, Mercury trine Neptune that I talked about. Mercury trine Mars in Cancer, which is the opposite of Pluto. So Mercury here can be the truth teller in a sense, in a way of being that can somewhat diffuse the explosiveness of the opposition between Mars and Pluto. The truth still needs to be spoken. What happened the last week with Mercury in Scorpio and the things I talked about in this beginning of the video? And then we go to the new moon. Can you take those tools and the internal emotional processes that one has been dealing with, put it into words, but not get into a fight, not get into a power struggle? I think it's possible. But I also think it cannot all be done in a moment in one day. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are, where it's been ongoing conversations and the truth not being told, all of a sudden it is this week, or then you feel like you're being clamped down and imposed upon, and then there's the rebellion. And I'm like, no, don't, you can't do this to me, and I must stand for this. Well, sometimes we have no choice. But if you do, I think one can draw out a story where you don't make impulsive decisions or actions or even say the harshest of truth all at one time. Can a conversation happen where I speak my truth, and it's hardcore, right? And then you do it. I actually listen to you or you listen to me. That's really how communication should work. And can you then like table it, and then can you come back in another day or 2 days down the line? Like, that's the healthy way of doing things, right? Well, you know, if everyone's feeling anxiety filled and nervous and it's wound up in this world, we find ourselves in impulsive situations. So hence here comes Mars in Cancer, and Cancer is a sign that deals with family and protection and safety and security. And if it isn't grounded, it will be set off by a challenge by Pluto. Look to Mercury to help you here that day in the next several days. I'm going to do another video on this. When I get into the second, Mercury is going to make the official trine to Mars in Cancer, 1:21 a.m. on Saturday. Mercury makes a sextile, great opportunity with Pluto here at 8:03 a.m. on Saturday Pacific. Then Mercury goes into Sagittarius on Saturday. After all the intensity of this week of Mercury in Scorpio, Mercury is released into Sagittarius, a mutable sign that deals with duality and seeing things in different truths from many different angles, and the seeking of that truth in a different way than what Mercury in Scorpio was doing. Again, if you could see what I'm saying here, spread out the conversation for 4 or 5 days, because there will be different facets of it. You get through the new moon and this truth telling of this week, then we get into Mercury going into Sagittarius on Saturday and the Sunday. The conversation and the tone switches. And I think people can maybe understand one's own truth or someone else's own truth. I don't expect that in the damn internet comments section, by the way, but I'm saying more on a one-to-one or certain relational stories that you have. Okay, so I know I said a lot to that. My advice is to spread truth telling out this week and to use the different tools, but you don't want to half-ass it. You do speak your truth 100%. You just maybe in chunks, right? So basically, when we get to Saturday, we have Mercury at the tail end of Scorpio and then into Sagittarius, I think is the key in the potion one can drink this week. It continues because the moon will be in Scorpio, also in the background on the new moon day on Friday, and Saturday the 2nd and the 3rd. Moon in Scorpio helps this along, because basically now the moon is going to make the connections to Saturn and Neptune and everything from an emotional realm. So the solutions are there. Okay, I threw out a lot at you. I'm not going to apologize for that, but stay with me. We get into the 3rd. We have the time change that happens here in the United States, which always throws people off. I wish they wouldn't do that anymore. And then we have officially Mars at 3:37 a.m. on Sunday. Do its official opposition to Pluto that I talked about was part of the new moon, building this whole week, and will be part of our lives in the next 3 to 4 months. Mars opposite Pluto. I've been ranting for 19 and 45 seconds here, and I just had to take a deep breath because situations like this are of the warring nature. And especially when it comes with instinct and survival and how impulsive we act from those places. How can someone or the world have Pluto on one side and Mars on the other, and how can they find a way together? I don't know exactly right now, but since this is the first of 3 of these, we are going to learn. And if some of us are willing to learn how to do this and experience it, know that you're going to take some scrapes and you're going to fall on your ass with this one. Some bruises. Mars, in one way, the only way for Mars to get stuff done is to be challenged or to challenge. And scrapes and bruises, armor's built, right? It's just for what purpose? If it's for self-empowerment in a positive way, I think it's there. If it's for power and manipulation and messing with people and stomping on other people to get to the top, whatever that means, get to the top is such a hyper-capitalistic way of thinking, and that's how a lot of the way works, it's not good. So just mind you have control of how you make decisions or what happens to you. You don't have control over everything. But if you're going to fight for something or fight for yourself, think about the way you will do it. Sometimes it's do or die, right? And I get it. But it doesn't have to be that way all the time. But you still have to stand up for things. And Pluto challenges. That's what it does. But a lot of the times, if one moves through a Pluto situation in their life, it deals with a new world that comes, a regeneration. But it's like the place between death and rebirth, the liminal place, is very hard, especially if you don't even know you're there, right? But if you recognize that you are in a Plutonian situation, I think that's where the true power comes. And if you notice that some of the things that gave you power in the past do not work anymore, is that worth fighting for, right? So if you can make that call and that observation at least, I think you have 50% of the quote unquote battle, because then you know exactly what to let go and what to move forward with. And if it does deal with survival or fighting for something, you'll be most effective, right? Dealing with something that's clear and not an old habitual habit connected to a lot of deep, dark stuff, okay? So side rant about Mars, Pluto, my version of it, again, happens on the 3rd officially, then 7:25 a.m., Venus in Sagittarius now will be opposite Jupiter in Gemini. I could do a whole new video on this, and this is part of a massive Jupiter-Saturn story. My Geminis, my Sagittarians, you definitely got a week ahead of you, and I think you have 2 months ahead of you. All my mutable signs, you're getting the clues to what we're going to deal with. The farther we go into November and into December, you will be challenged and there will be an answering to. Secret for you, always look here in the transits to Saturn and Pisces to help you. That's the Geminis, the Virgos, the Sagittarius especially, and the Geminis. Saturn and Pisces, whether you like it or not, becomes your friend and your guide. So when we get to Sunday here and Venus and Sag, right? We talked about this in the forecast. All of a sudden it's opposite Jupiter. This is where things can get wild. Like you don't know what the truth is in relationships, or you think that you need this or you want these things that, you know, that Venus and Sagittarius is seeking, and the duality, and then Jupiter on the opposite side kind of like multiplies it, right? And this is where misinformation, misrelating the truth or not, you don't know. And then at that point, like I said, Mercury enters Sagittarius the day before, and Mercury in Sagittarius isn't saying the direct truth that Mercury in Scorpio is. It doesn't work that way, right? So here's the other side of it. Mercury in Sagittarius might bloviate, like go over the top with its call and its optimism and like, oh, you can do this, you can do that. This is like the guru's Mercury, right? Like it can sell you on anything. And if that is part of Venus and Sagittarius and Jupiter inflating situations, you could see what can happen here. That's why I'm a big fan of Saturn, because Saturn's always keeping the reality in the situation. It's always bringing it in. And Saturn was a major factor in the beginning of this forecast when it was connecting to Venus and Sagittarius. That's why Saturn is your go-to mutable sign, even if you hate the planet right now and you can't stand it, because it will save your ass in the end. It will keep you in line. So my side rant about that. And then Mars, later on that night, on Sunday, the Pacific time, the 3rd, Mars will leave Cancer at 8:09 p.m. and go into Leo pretty much until the first week of December. And it is then when it will go retrograde, and the stories will go backwards, and we will review the last 2 months of what we've done with Mars and Cancer here. What I've talked about in my forecast videos will all come right back at you. My Cancer people, rising signs. I know I've talked to some of you in the last couple of weeks in sessions and readings. Remember what we talked about. Remember the tools. Remember that when the Mars retrograde happens, it goes all the way into January, February, and March, that you have a chance to review and redo and learn. If you don't want to hear that message and you somehow forget, don't worry. Pluto will be there in your face 2 more times to remind you. All right, so I laugh, but I'm serious. That is the forecast for this week. I'm deciding right now. I'm going to pull a live stream off this week. I don't know if it's going to be, maybe it'll be on Halloween. It could be Tuesday. I'll figure this out. Definitely to talk about the new moon and some other thoughts. If you somehow made it this far and you're new here, I'm Sparkles of Gold. I will always be straight up with you. I'm not here to grift you. I'm not here to use some weird, trendy, weird stuff you see on YouTube to use fear and astrology mixed together. I don't do that. I have humor. I'm a weirdo, but I'm a realist in the end. I'll always be straight up with you, whether it's on YouTube or on a session, okay? So if you're here, subscribe, hit the bell. If you notice, you're gonna look at my subscriber count. I'm 10 away from 3,000. I hit it, hopefully by Wednesday. It's another reason to have a celebratory live stream with all you, okay? So in the meantime, be good to you. Find the simple things. Use nature to help you in these wild times, okay? All right, until next time, I'll see you on the next video.